If you're here because you're involved with what we would call subscription service or what we would call demand response, your city council is heavily supportive of those efforts, and we expect full continuation of those efforts. There's nothing we're doing today that would dial back our commitment to subscription services or dial back our work that we do with demand response. Those are things that we want to continue to be fully implementing and doing just like we have over the last few years. So if you're here on that topic, I just want to kind of give you a moment of calm here at the start to say there's nothing in this PowerPoint that's about going backwards or having less service related to demand response, and that's an important thing for us. So again, what are our meeting goals? Explain our services, receive input from you. That's what we're here for. We're very sincere about our desire to listen to you. Some basics for you. I mentioned several of these. I have to brag at the point on the bottom. Not only were we the Transit Agency of the Year in 2012, we were also the Transit Agency of the Year in 2019. So we're always trying to excel, trying to do a good job, trying to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of things. Another thing that I'll mention in terms of us being on the cutting edge is just today we received word from the Denton County Transit Authority, who's another one of our partners that we work with, that they've given us approval on something we call an interlocal agreement. And that allows us to utilize their software and their technology for something I'm going to talk about here that we're very excited to offer you that's new, which is called Mobility on Demand. And you might think to yourself, well, gosh, I hear all of this new stuff about new technology. How's that going to work for us with Star Transit? Well, because we now have access, signed that agreement today, we'll have all of the access to their technology. For a small transit agency like ours, having access to somebody else's technology, that's a great thing. And so that's going to really expedite what we can do with mobility on demand services, and I'll talk about that. But that's news today, and I wanted to pass that on. I mentioned some of the cities we work with, so that's Balch Springs, that's Seagoville, that's DeSoto, Hutchins. We're signing a new agreement now with the city of Wilmer so that we can do their services. And of course, our historic home base is Kaufman County and Rockwall County. So all of those cities in Kaufman and Rockwall County, we also work with them and have been doing that for quite some time. Here's a pretty little map of our basics of our service area. We do some service also in Ellis and Navarro County. That's primarily gained at elderly and disabled services. And one of the things we always mention about our core elderly and disabled services is you have to remember, Star Transit actually was born out of Kaufman County Senior Services. So back in the 1979-1980 time period, Kaufman County Senior Services spun us off as an organization. We became a state governmental entity soon thereafter. So we're actually kind of got a really interesting history there, but we've never really lost that commitment that we have to senior citizens. That's the bread and butter of what we do. That's the heart and soul of who we are as an organization. So moving on, here's some of our existing services. So our current services, demand response, a lot of you know that. We do 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 10 buses, 8 hours a day. I'll use this phrase several times during the presentation that we have this 8 hour a day, or we have 24 hours a day, or we have 96 hours a day. What does that mean? That just means that's the number of bus hours we have. That's the number of hours our combined fleet of drivers are driving, okay? And that gives you a sense of the scale and the proportion of the work that we're putting into this. Compass, as you guys know, is the service that goes from Hanby into the Longview station. That's a key element for tonight's discussion because we do think there's some changes that are warranted there. There's some issues with our contract with Dallas Area Rapid Transit that means that's just going to change. And whenever you have change, sometimes that can be a little painful, but we think we've got a good strategy moving forward, and we've got some options for how to deal with that and what we will do there. So let's jump right into Mesquite Compass. Again, that operation is going to the green line. Yes, we are going to make changes to it, but yes, we think we'll continue to go to the green line. We're going to continue to get to that destination point. Very, very important to continue to do that. Right now it's on the DART fare structure. And what does that mean? That means that you're buying and you're paying for fares on Compass as if you were on Dallas Area Rapid Transit. So that's a key thing that we'll show you that's going to change here in the future. Here's a picture of that. Y'all know it, so I'm not going to kind of belabor that for you. And there's the schedule. Again, that's the services that we're doing today on Compass. And so here's our revisions. This may be what you came for, so I'm going to go through and jump right to this. If you're using Compass now, I want you to think to yourself that Compass is going to change on October the 1st, okay? And what we're here for is to kind of figure out exactly how should it change on October the 1st. So here's some of the basics. It won't be called DART Express Bus 282 anymore, okay? It's just going to have a new name, so that's one point. It won't be a DART route anymore. The DART fare structure is no longer going to apply, and DART passes aren't going to be something that you utilize for that. I know one of the questions already is going to be, well, wait a minute, I've got fares, I've got such and such. We're going to have a transition period. You know, we're your friendly folks here. We're going to make sure that we have a good transition if you've got some fare that you need to continue to use. So what's it going to change to? It's going to change to a general public fare of $1 each way, okay? However, if you are a qualified 60 or older, veteran, disabled rider, that's no fare, okay? That's consistent with how we operate our fixed routes as Star Transit throughout our entire system. So really what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, the Compass route used to operate with all of the strings attached from Dallas Area Rapid Transit. Now we're not going to have those strings attached from Dallas Area Rapid Transit. We're going to operate this route independently, so it's going to be on the standard Star Transit way of doing business, and that's what our policy shows here. General public, $1 each way. This goes into effect in October. Qualified 60 plus, veterans, disabled riders, all no fare. And of course, October will be no fare for everybody because that's our intro month, and we'll be working on how we manage that for the first couple of months. So we've got three basic ideas, and we'll see which one of them makes the most sense. And part of figuring out which one makes the most sense is listening tonight, reading our rider surveys, finding out what our riders have been talking to with some of the folks who've been riding the buses, talking to folks, and trying to make sure that we do the right thing, both for current riders and for potential new riders. Option one, keep the route and reduce the operating hours. Option two, add some sort of town east area stop to the current route. So a lot of the feedback we've heard, frankly, for the last 5 years was, gosh, I love the route, but I'd sure like to go somewhere else associated with it. So we're going to talk about how that might work. And then another option would be maybe we just need to run this route from the town east area and go straight over to Hanby from there and do that instead. Try that as an alternative because maybe that would actually be more efficient for a lot of folks to be joining us, parking at Town East or in an area right close to Town East, and then no longer have that stop at Hanby. So that's a big deal, right? We might not stop at Hanby, but we're going to continue to go to Longview Station. And we are just trying to figure out the best way to accomplish that. So let's look at that a little bit with some of these ideas. Again, here's the basic. This is what we're doing now. I'm starting right over here on Hanby. I'm driving all the way out and getting to that Longview Station. That's an 8-mile trip. It's about 24 minutes long when you're doing that service. We've had lots of success with this in the past, but we feel like it's time to make a little bit of a change. But one option is leave this in place and just maybe dial down the service a little bit to take away some period of time that maybe isn't the most full bus that you might see. So here's what those times would be. I don't want to just try to read these to you. You can access this information on our website, but the idea would be we would do every 60 minutes instead of every half hour. That's a pretty meaningful change, right? So that would be something you'd really have to manage your own schedule if you're using us for this service, and that'd be a change for us. But again, start very early, get you there in the morning, and then make sure that we can take care of getting all of that transit service done for you. The next slide talks about, there we go, option number 2. So again, the map tells a lot of the story. I'm starting off close to Town East Mall. I'm turning, I'm coming down on Galloway. I continue down Galloway basically till I get where I can swing over to Hanby. I do a pickup at Hanby, and then I'm basically running the exact same route that I'm running now, okay? So that's a pretty straightforward option, right? I essentially add a stop at Town East Mall, or close to Town East Mall, I should say, and then I come up and down Galloway as I need to, and I get over to Longview Station from there. So this is one of the three options that's under consideration. Maybe this would be a preferable option for us to jump into. Here's that timetable. Again, lots of detail here, but you would be starting bright and early. Again, you'd be trying to do a series of trips with 2 different buses. You'd have different pickup times. You can see here, for example, I'd have a 6:15 start at Town East, and then a 6:30 at Davis, and then a 6:55 at Longview Station, and then moving through the rest of those stops. So that's a very, complicated chart to kind of try to look at and soak in. But the point is, we would give you a series of options, but we would be adding that stop on Town East. So from a frequency of how quickly and how often can I go to Longview, I'm going to go to Longview a little less often because I'm stretching that bus service out to make sure that I can include the stop at Town East Mall. Okay? Oh, there we go. The next slide is number 3. The next option is number 3. Here the trip length is 20.6 miles, so that's about a 21-mile route. Instead of going all the way to Hanby, in this case, we're going to have some sort of parking facility available very close to Town East Mall. Don't quote me on that exact location yet, because that's still in the works. But we'll make sure that we have a good location there, and then we'll head down Town East Boulevard, and we'll get ourselves back down to the same route. So in this particular case, instead of going underneath of 635 because we went to Hanby, now I'm crossing it way on the north side of 80. I come down and I cross 80 further to the west, and then I get back into that same route that we're running. So, the last half of the route is going to look very familiar. It's just we peel off of that early to make sure that we can get back over to Town East Mall. So if you think about the difference between option 2 and option 3, basically what you're seeing here is option 2, you might be on the bus for a longer period of time if what your aim is to go between Town East Mall and Longview Station. By going over to Hanby, it makes it a longer overall trip, but we're trying to figure out, okay, is this a necessary thing to do because we've got folks who really, really need that Hanby option. If the feeling is that we can make the change and get over to do only Town East to Longview directly, and we just roll on the arterials. You'll notice here, we like to stay off of freeways because they're not as reliable sometimes, right? So how often is 635 completely backed up? I can't keep a reliable travel time for you if I'm hopping onto and off of 635 and US 80 and that sort of thing. So we'll be on arterials getting from point A to point B to do that. Here, the trip length would be about 35 minutes. So the advantage of this over the other option is making sure that we are just reducing your travel time. And again, that's not set. We're trying to pick between these 3 options right now, okay? The next slide just shows you that trip table. Again, we'll make these available for everybody so you can kind of see what that would look like. In this example, you would start at Town East at, let's pick 6:02. Then you'd get to Longview at 6:25, and you can see instantly how that is different, right? So that's going to get you from Town East to Longview at a lot quicker clip than if we stopped at the Hanby Station location. Not to say that we're picking this option, but that's just something we're thinking about right now to figure that part of this thing out and find out what everybody here has as their input to that. So what's our timeline? Today's the public meeting. We hope that by August the 5th, everybody here and everybody we're out interviewing, everybody we're out talking to, the folks on the bus that we're talking to, the folks that we're trying to communicate with out in the public have given us their public comments. So one important job that you can do today is you can help us sort of be ambassadors to getting follow-up information. This public meeting comment form, it's not just for you here. you might know 10 other people who are interested in this thing, and you can pick up 10 extra copies of this, or you can print 10 copies off our website, or you can go get other people to give us feedback, and we'd absolutely love to get that additional feedback, okay? So that's an important part of this. Don't feel like, oh, well, my friend wasn't here, they don't get to give comment. If you've got some friends or somebody you know who might want to give some input, take this form or take extras of this form and give it to them so that they can also give some of that feedback. Our goal will be then to talk to your city council between about August 5th and October 1st, talk to some of our grant agencies, make sure that everybody's comfortable with this thing, and then put out some public information in September. Again, that's part of why I want to have everybody's contact information. We need to send out to you the information about which of these options was selected so that that's very clear and understandable and everybody knows, okay, I went to the public meeting and I really did hear back from them about what they're planning on doing and what they're planning on implementing. That's a big deal for us to try to make sure that everybody learned what the decision was, okay? So it's not like we're voting on it tonight or anything. We want to take feedback, find out what you're thinking, and see how we can work that through into part of the process. We might hear something tonight, hear something from rider interviews, and then combine that all into something that can really work for all of us. So here's Mobility on Demand. And by the way, you get this referred to publicly. Sometimes you might hear this as mobility as a service, or you might hear it as microtransit, or you might hear it as mobility on demand, or you might hear it as, oh, kind of like Uber, or oh, kind of like Lyft. Well, all of that is just generically a thing where what's happening is you're using a phone where you make a telephone call, or you're using punch and buttons on your cell phone to call a transit vehicle to where you need it, when you need it, okay? And we do that sort of service right now in some other jurisdictions strictly on a phone call basis. And because of this new arrangement we have with Denton County Transit Authority, we are also now moving into a world where we're doing it by, oh, I can punch buttons on my cell phone and make that service happen. So that's kind of generalities with mobility on demand. Again, the customer calls, we arrive within 15 minutes, we provide the service. So you just show up and say, hey, I need this, or maybe you're boarding the train going to Longview and you know you're going to get there in a couple of minutes, and you call and say, hey, I'm on the train now with DART, I'm going to be there in 25 minutes, here's what I need. So rides within a certain travel zone are $3. So rides to a Star Transit bus route within the travel zone are $1. So that kind of makes it like a fixed route cost schedule. It's a cash and pre-bay. We don't do a fare discount because it is a immediate, we're providing this service right now. There's a shared ride service with trip purpose freedom. Gosh, that sounds like somebody was trying to market it when they wrote that. So what does that mean? That means I have more freedom about where I can go. I don't have to only go to Hanby. I don't have to only go to Longview. It may be that you call us and say, hey, I'm going to be at Longview at this time, and really you don't want to go to Hanby, you want to go to a different destination. Well, that would give us the flexibility to give you that ride and then use that data in the future to figure out what we really need to do with this. We call it a shared ride service because it might be that there is somebody else from the city of Mesquite who needs a similar ride at the same time. So this is what you would hear of as being, okay, I've got not a 25 passenger bus, I've got a 4-passenger vehicle, I've got a 12-passenger vehicle. That smaller vehicle might pick up you, and it might pick up you, it might pick up somebody else, because all of you have said, oh, I need a mobility on demand ride, and you all happen to be going to a similar location or a similar string of locations, right? If I get 3 calls from Longview that say I need to go to 3 different destinations on Galloway, okay, great, I can then go do that service. I get a phone call from Town East Mall that says I need to go to 3 different locations close to the industrial park area. Okay, great, I can do that because I'm doing a shared ride mobility on demand service. So this would be, again, a Star Transit driver in a smaller vehicle. You hear a lot of complaints in the Uber and Lyft world of, well, I don't know who's going to pick me up. It's not a handicapped accessible vehicle. I don't know the security of knowing that I'm safe in that vehicle. Well, we take all of that away because as a public agency, we're interviewing drivers. We know our drivers. Our vehicles go through a very rigorous process. We can give you more safety and security in what we're doing than if you were to go with one of the private companies. We've got an age requirement listed there. That's obviously an important part of the package. Whoops, went the wrong way there. Okay. So here's sort of some standard business model things with this. And I don't want to claim that all of this is burnt in stone and we're just not even going to entertain changing any of it. This is discussion time, okay? So the maximum trip length rule normally depends on travel size. So there's sort of this industry standard, and this is just common sense, right? Anybody here would think of the same thing if you were going to start this thing up. You don't have one vehicle and try to serve all of the state of Texas, right? You don't have one vehicle and try to serve a large geographic area because then you can never serve anybody effectively. So there's some sizes associated with how you set up these travel zones, and that's just practical, right? So we're going to try to get that done for you and make sure that we can have reasonable sized travel zones. So again, trip, origin, destination, we need to work on our travel zone. Advanced scheduling options would be available. So for example, some folks who run these mobility on demand services, we call it mobility on demand, but actually if you call us 23 and a half hours in advance, we still provide that service and call it mobility on demand. And some places will do it on an 8-hour, right? They'll say, well, it's not really mobility on demand unless you're talking about a much narrower time frame. So we're going to be searching around for that. We operate it in our other parts of our jurisdiction as a 24-hour, but here in the city of Mesquite, maybe that needs to be a little bit different. And so we need to listen to our riders, listen to folks a little bit, and make sure we nail down that period of time. Again, we're transitioning where we can do this with a mobile app. Because of some of these agreements we now have in place with Denton County Transit Authority, we think we can do that fairly efficiently this fall, and we'll make sure that we have a good long-term zone structure. We put some service hours on here, but this is part of what we're working on, right? So for example, maybe we have a 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. Gosh, why so early? Because a lot of what we do is about getting people to work, and getting people to work has got to start pretty darn early. 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., that's the other half of this. You can see this would mean I would have 2 buses going during lunch hour, and maybe that's a very important part of this package because I've got to make up for that issue that you mentioned related to midday service. Whether I'm starting my fixed route into Dallas, somewhere close to Town East, or somewhere close to Hanby, or some combination of both of them, we probably don't have the ridership levels in the city of Mesquite to run those all day long. On the other hand, we do have the ridership levels to say, you know what, we can do peak hour in the morning, or a peak period in the morning, a peak period in the afternoon, and all of the midday service we need to serve, that's actually better to do with a mobility on demand template so that we're getting a record of, okay, I called, I got the service, I called, I got the service. Because that's what the rider volumes have told us over the years. So that's some basics related to it, and again, that's stuff we're trying to gather information about. Here's our timeline on that one, very similar. July 22nd, that's the public meeting. August 5th, close of public comment period. Fall, launch that mobility on demand service. Is that the last PowerPoint slide? It is. Right now, there are 96 hours of total service in the city overall. The DART savings I keep talking about and a little bit more oomph from the City Council this year are taking us from 96 hours a day of total service to 106 hours a day of total service. So I know that seems like a hard number to get your mind around, but just know that we're increasing the number of labor hours dedicated to the city of Mesquite. That's what the DART change is allowing us to do. We hope that by increasing that total number of service hours in the city, even though some of this will be rocky because it's changes, we hope that that will get you where you need to be. So demand response, no change, 10 buses, 8 hours a day. Compass, having 1 bus for 4 hours in the morning, 1 bus for 4 hours in the afternoon. The mobility on demand, 18 total service hours with that. That's how all that adds up to 106. And I would say that what we're trying to really do right now is figure out the balance between Compass and Mobility on Demand. What are we really going to do with that? That's what we're working on right now. And y'all's input has been really valuable to us. And again, like I said, we hope that with the increased number of total hours of service, we'll get what you need somehow, some way.